from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 14. And I've decided that I'm going to read verses 1 through 14. On one occasion, when Jesus was going to the house of a leader of the Pharisees to eat a meal on the Sabbath, they were watching him closely. Just then, in front of him, there was a man who had the dropsy. Congestive heart failure. Anybody know that? Congestive heart failure. They don't say it here, but that's what it is. And Jesus asked the lawyers and the Pharisees, is it lawful to cure people on the Sabbath or not? But they were silent. So Jesus took him and healed him and sent him away. And then he said to them, if one of you has a child or an ox that has fallen into a well, will you not immediately pull it out on a Sabbath day? And they could not reply to this. When he noticed how the guests chose the places of honor, he told them a parable. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not sit at the place of honor in case someone more distinguished than you has been invited by your host. And the host who invited both of you may come and say to you, give this person your place, and then in disgrace you would start to take the lowest place. But when you are invited, go and sit down at the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he may say to you, friend, move up higher, and you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. I'm going to stop there. I think I'm going to do the next one next week. Thus ends the reading of the Word. Now, it's important that you know context. You always know that I'm going to hit you with context. So, you need to understand that in chapter 9 of Luke's Gospel, Jesus, some of you can complete the sentence for me, Jesus set his face for Jerusalem. Jesus set his face for Jerusalem. So, chapter 9, verse 51, Jesus is on his last Passover pilgrimage to Jerusalem where he will be crucified. That context is very important. Every encounter that he has with everyone from chapter 9 on is important in the context of this being the end of his ministry. He has a lot to say in a very short period of time. It's not, so this is not just one of those dinner parties he went to at the beginning of his ministry. This isn't one of those fellowship din-dins that he had with sinners and tax collectors and even other Pharisees. This is a different dinner. This is a dinner that means everything. This is a dinner that has a very, very important message. Now, chapter 13, Jesus healed a woman on the Sabbath in the synagogue. And the leader of the synagogue chided the woman who was healed and all the other folks in the synagogue. When Jesus healed her, he chided the folks saying, there are 6 days on which work ought to be done. Come on those days and be cured. So now you have a bit of a context for Jesus' little speech here at the dinner party in chapter 14. He also talks in chapter 13 about the kingdom of God, what the kingdom of God is like. And he says the kingdom of God in chapter 13 is like a mustard seed, an eensy, weensy, teensy, tootsy, teensy, smallest seed you can even imagine, that when planted, the one seed, that one seed can grow into a giant tree in which birds can build nests, big time. He also talks about the kingdom of God being like yeast that a woman put into 3 measures of flour. That yeast, how many can bake bread? that yeast ever so unobtrusively, ever so surreptitiously begins to rise and grow until that flour is ready to be bakeable bread. The kingdom of God, says Jesus, is like this. Also in chapter 13, at the very end of chapter 13, he is confronted. He talks about the first who will be last and the last who will be first. And just after that, he's confronted by some Pharisees who say, you know, you might want to think about leaving town because we've got it on good authority that Herod wants to kill you. And Jesus says, you go tell that fox. I love that. You go tell that fox for me. Listen, I'm casting out demons and performing cures today and tomorrow, and on the third day, I will finish my work. Then he says, yet, today, tomorrow, and the next day, I must be on my way because it is impossible for a prophet to be killed outside of Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. Now imagine the Pharisees hearing Jesus make that statement, hearing Jesus say, I'm going to Jerusalem because that's where prophets are killed. My sense is that maybe those Pharisees said, you know, this guy deserves a dinner. And I think they invited him to dinner. I think that's a possibility. I think it could be, because this is a dinner in the house of a Pharisaic leader, of a leader of the synagogue. And it's on the Sabbath day, and everybody there are lawyers, Pharisees, scholars of the Jewish law. Everybody there. They've invited Jesus to come to this dinner, which my guess is maybe a fellowship opportunity that they have every Sabbath. My guess is that this dinner happens on a weekly basis. These guys get together to talk about their week, to talk about their thoughts, their ideas, to talk about religion, spirituality, and politics. These are men who get together, who are like-minded men, who are knowledgeable in the law, and the whole purpose of their fellowship gathering isn't to eat. The whole purpose of their gathering on this, the seventh day, is to discuss, to share, to think together, to talk together. And they have included this Jesus in this fellowship meal. Traditionally, that's what meals were for in those days. It was an honor, in fact, just to be invited to dine. It was an honor to receive the invitation, to be invited to have a place at anyone's table. It was an honor to be in fellowship with other people at a table where you would dine together. Jesus is not the honored guest. Luke doesn't tell us that he is the honored guest at this dinner. He is one among many guests at this dinner. However, he makes his presence known in the first 5 minutes, probably during the cocktail hour. He makes his presence known as he's standing there, and a man in congestive heart failure is standing in front of him, probably unable to breathe or move, and Jesus asks all of the people present who are scholars of the law, who know what the law says. He says, hey, is it lawful to cure, to heal someone on the Sabbath?